everybody, it's Mr. Wagstaff. Welcome to the dramatic conclusion of U.S. history. Now, today we're going to talk about Joe Biden's administration. Full disclosure, I'm recording this in 2022. We have not even gotten to the midterm elections yet, so we're not even quite halfway through Joe Biden's time in office. But talk about things that are currently taking place in the United States and bring us up to present day as we end the course. So let's get started. So Joe Biden wins the election in 2020 over Donald Trump, even though tons of people voted for Donald Trump. Other than, obviously, Joe Biden got the most votes. He had the most votes in the history of forever, and Donald Trump got the second most votes. Literally only Joe Biden ever beat him. Joe Biden's vice president is Kamala Harris, and she is the first African-American woman to be the vice president. So because when in 2020 when the election happened, and this is them holding their hands up in victory, it's in the middle of the COVID pandemic, so it was kind of mandated anywhere in public you had to wear a mask. So this is a picture of what they look like. Joe Biden on the left and Kamala Harris on the right. Joe Biden is the oldest president we've ever had. He is 76 right now, I believe. He is older than Donald Trump, even though Donald Trump is also in his 70s. Hillary Clinton is in the 70s. So it's the baby boom generation is still here, holding strong and running for the presidency. Obviously, Kamala Harris is not in her 70s. So you would think, typically when somebody gets 72.5 million votes, and I think the final count might have been a little bit higher than when some of the mail-in votes got counted, that they would have this overwhelming mandate as the presidency. That's not necessarily the case. No one's ever come anywhere close to 72 million votes. Nobody's ever broken 70 million votes. Donald Trump got 68.5 million votes, which is more than anybody else in the history of America. It's important to point out that a lot of people that caused this voter turnout was just the divisive nature of America at the time in 2020, and still, as it's recording, still is today, that a lot of people, while voting for their own candidate, are also voting because they're against the other guy. This is common. So a lot of these votes for Joe Biden isn't necessarily this overwhelming support of Joe Biden. It's kind of anti-Trump voters would vote for Biden in order to try to get Trump out of office. So Donald Trump himself, while he has this massive audience with Twitter, actually got banned from Twitter. Now, this is 2022. Elon Musk currently is in talks of buying Twitter. So it's a whole other thing. So depending on when you watch this could all be, kind of crazy. I don't know how this will play out. But Donald Trump got banned from Twitter. Twitter decided after the January 6th riots that they banned him for violating their policies. So he went and created his own social media network to keep his audience there. But on Twitter, he was banned. So one of the first things that Joe Biden does, and this is understandable after you have something like the January 6th riots of 2021. So Joe Biden gets sworn in a couple weeks later. They want to have a January 6th commission come out and basically figure out what happened, why it happened, how to prevent it in the future, and what caused, because this is not something that happens in America. You have angry people just charging into Congress trying to, it's like violence, destroy, breaking windows, clearly showing up, to do more than talk. Hundreds of arrests. So there's a look into why that happened. Donald Trump was impeached, but that really just associates with his job, and then he was found not guilty, basically along party lines. So the January 6th committee is of Republicans and Democrats. There are more Democrats than Republicans, but there is a huge pushback by Trump supporters not even want this committee to exist, which, again, is very reflective of society. You had a riot. People broke into Congress trying to what appears to be look for and attack elected representatives in like an insurrection to overthrow the government. I mean, that sounds crazy coming out of my mouth, but it was to debate a presidential election. That was the motivating factor of these people. We need to figure out why that happened, how we got to that point. Just having a committee to look into why it happened is wildly unpopular by Trump supporters because of the fear that it might make Donald Trump look bad. Which is wild that needing to know how to keep America's democracy secure, which is our entire Constitution is based on, still seems to take a back seat to partisan politics and supporting certain political parties and certain politicians over the law. But the question here is, why do you think it was politically controversial, which we just got to talk about, to even look into the causes of the January 6th riot? Because it was a controversial thing just to put the commission together. Because there's a lot of people that didn't even want to have a commission, didn't even want to look at it, just ignore it and move on like nothing happened. So pause me, answer that completely. We're moving on. So I need to give credit here, as you know, talking about Donald Trump and the other stuff. This is more of a positive. It's not positive or negative as much as it is the consistency between administrations. All right. And it deals with what America did when the COVID shutdown. Let me back out of the way. So that's Joe Biden and Donald Trump's administration. When society just shut down and people couldn't go to work. Well, people don't go to work, they don't make money. So Donald Trump and Joe Biden both passed stimulus checks, issued stimulus checks, which is just direct money deposited to American citizens. Pretty much all American citizens that weren't already independently wealthy. Thousands of dollars went to every single American family. So Donald Trump, I think, did 2 checks, and then Joe Biden did a check, and it's about $5,000 to $6,000 for a family of 4 that every family got. This is extremely helpful from both administrations for people who are trying to buy food and survive during this time when they were not allowed to work because America kind of shut down. Well, in Joe Biden's presidency now, once the pandemic, while it's still going on, it's lifted and everybody's kind of gone back to the way things were, we realized that there is an issue with the stimulus checks. Number one, they weren't really based on anything. You just put America in debt. We didn't have any money to be able to give that out. So it's almost like just printing off more money. By doing that, it puts extra money into circulation. When you put extra money into circulation without adding additional value to circulation, it causes inflation. And inflation in the United States currently is at almost record heights at 8.5%. The economy has recovered. It's kind of very interesting how the economy worked. Once the economy opens back up, everybody is hiring, so the unemployment rate is very low. The problem is because money lost its value, the prices of everything went up because you have to have more dollars now to buy it. So prices are higher for everything. People are hiring, but wages are slower to go up than inflation is. And so runaway inflation is a major concern in the United States right now due to, in large part, the stimulus checks. Now, had they not done the stimulus checks, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, it could have been a whole lot more catastrophic than dealing with an 8% inflation rate. So the question here is, explain how the stimulus checks led to inflation after the COVID restrictions were lifted. So pause me, answer that completely. We're moving on. So after COVID-19, there starts to be some new norms that are taking place in the United States. So when everybody was forced to work at home, there's a lot of companies that were able to work at home. That they were basically all online, they had software, and they could work at home and not miss a beat. Well, then when COVID ended and the offices opened back up, there's a lot of companies who said, no, I think we'll just remain like this. Like insurance companies and places like that, like Nationwide, those companies said, it actually saves us money if we don't have to pay for a building and people can just work from home. A lot of people enjoyed working from home, all right, because they're able to be with their families and things like that. there's also a lot of people who need that disconnect from working at home and being able to go to work and then go back and forth. So, but prior to COVID, that really wasn't an option. There were a lot of companies that really came out, like Google, Microsoft, that have, at least in part, some type of permanent work from home if you choose to do so. So the new normal in a lot of aspects here with COVID-19 deals pretty heavily with the ability that work life is a lot more flexible, as in you don't have to necessarily drive into the office every day. Most people probably are going back to work, and there's obviously jobs like construction, blue collar workers, people that work in retail. You don't have a choice on that one. But like software engineers and things like that, people who would like travel to work just to sit down and look at a computer all day, those people can just look at a computer at home, and it really opened up a whole new world for a lot of people that could work at home after the pandemic. Another big one is virtual school. So like higher level degrees, like online master's degrees and things like that, those have been done for a long time. It wasn't until COVID hits where entire public schools closed down and students were forced to have school online. Most people hated that, all right? Some people really thrived in that environment, kind of like me as a teacher. This is how all of this got started. Is some people are like, hey, I actually have a skill set and it works better like that. There's some students who said, I would much rather just learn virtually than go back into school. And so the whole option for students around the country that if you choose to remain virtual, that is also an option, something that was completely unheard of prior to 2020 when the COVID pandemic hit and schools closed and everybody was forced to go virtual. Now, it's an option, and while it is not beneficial for most students, there is absolutely a part of the population in which virtual is an absolute necessity for a variety of reasons for their school from kindergarten to 12th grade. So, question here is, what are some of the things we learned as a society after COVID-19 pandemic? And you can even talk about your specific experiences if you remember going through that, depending on, unless you're watching this 100 years from now and you're like, look at that ancient stuff. So pause me, answer that completely. We're moving on. So again, we are only in 2022 when this is being recorded. We're not even halfway through Joe Biden's administration, but there's a very big issue, kind of connected to the inflation thing. But we got to talk about some foreign policy. And America's actually not even involved in this, but because America is a globalized, or the world's a globalized society, something happens somewhere else on the other side of the world, it affects America. So Russia. Even though the Soviet Union has collapsed, there's a country next to Russia called the Ukraine. The Ukraine was a satellite nation, now they're their own independent country, and while they trade heavily with Russia, they have toyed with the idea of joining NATO, which is an anti-Russia group, and be like buddy-buddy with America. Russia has basically told Ukraine, nah, you're not going to do that. Should also point out that when Joe Biden came in, all that tension between America and NATO that Donald Trump kind of caused, even though you can make an argument that he was, he actually improved relations because now NATO spends more money after being called out by Donald Trump. Relations that have strengthened with NATO and the United States back to kind of original levels, while they're still now paying more money thanks to Donald Trump's battle personality. So Ukraine is wanting to join NATO. They had talked about it. Russia's like, no, you're not. And Russia, kind of surprisingly, because they like lined their tanks up next to Ukraine like they're going to invade Ukraine. You're like, nah, like what? And Russia straight up invades Ukraine in 2022. Kind of surprisingly, it doesn't go great for Russia. They don't immediately take over Ukraine in like a couple weeks like they thought it was going to be. They actually thought it'd take a couple days. The war is still going on as I'm recording this, and it's pretty much appears to be a stalemate. And Russia is kind of looking for an exit strategy here where they don't look like they made a bad decision. So while I'm sure that'll play out, and if you're watching this in years to come, you'll know how that plays out. One of the things that does affect America is higher prices. So when wars happen in countries that we are involved with, whether it's Russia or the Ukraine, we basically reallocate a lot of our resources to either help them or accommodate stuff we're not getting in. Because of that war, and in addition to inflation, food prices have been on the rise. So while the normal inflation rate right now is like 8.5%, food prices are like 13 or 14% higher, which America typically has really cheap food. So America's not yet in any type of danger of like not being able to afford food, but it is a concerning metric as it keeps rising. Speaking of rising prices, gas prices currently are out of the roof. A lot of that is because of Russia. We are no longer buying oil from Russia. A lot of sanctions got put on Russia. So Joe Biden does not control gas prices. It's all private industries and things like that. However, when you're the president and bad things happen in America, you take the blame for it. And you know that's part of the job. So gas prices are current like $4.50 on average, which is absolutely insane in a country that 100% relies on gas-powered vehicles to function on a daily basis. So the infrastructure in the United States is vastly superior, let's start talking about highways and all that, to any other country. So the higher gas prices really hurts the American economy more than most other countries. And Joe Biden being the president, he takes the blame for it because he's the president, even though a lot of it is dealing with the Ukraine and Russia and just private industries called Shell and Exxon, private companies, make their own prices. And anyway, so that is the biggest concern right now in the United States is inflation and gas prices that just by typical standards, and especially these super low prices they were during COVID, are almost unbearable for an economy right now that's trying to get back on track. Really concerns a lot of people that there will be an upcoming recession because of it. But the question here is, how did Russia's invasion of Ukraine affect American gas prices? And if I didn't clarify that, we stopped buying gas from Russia. So basically cut down on the supply, increases demand, price goes up, also combined with inflation in America, which makes all prices go up anyway. So answer that completely, and congratulations, you've completed U.S. history.